And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. Hey, thanks for being here. We got a great program for you here, and we hope that you will stay tuned throughout the entire program. If you're listening to the radio version, especially on Wednesday at 9 a.m., then you better go to the podcast where you'll hear the entire interview. We hope that you will do just that. It could run, I don't know, could be an hour, 55, an hour and a half, 3 hours. I don't know. It just depends on how long we decide to go. But what we're going to do is we're going to find out what it means to feel better. We're going to do it let's see, my clock says 5 minutes. We'll feel better in 5 minutes. That's right. Unrealistic? I don't know. We'll find out. My guest is Amanda, and it is Hainline, and she is joining us all the way from, where are you, Amanda?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. All right. Well, very good. I look like I'm in Texas, but what are you going to do? Feel better in 5 minutes? Seriously? Now, I have heard it said that one way to feel better is, and this was the phrase that was used, just change the channel. Not necessarily because you're watching TV, listening to the radio, but because your mind is focused in a particular perspective on whatever, and that's causing you to feel the way that you feel. So change the emotional channel. Is that kind of along the lines of what we're talking about here today?
A little bit.
Okay.
That's definitely a component of it. But what I found is it's usually a little bit deeper than that. And what I like to talk about is, things from an energetic perspective, from your energy system perspective, because that's my background. And that's where my knowledge base lies. And of course, I bring psychology into it and, shifting perspective. But it's definitely a lot of times has to do with all of the, the negative emotions, the negative energy that we carry around from our experiences throughout our lifetime. So sometimes it's easy to change the channel, and sometimes it's not so easy to change the channel right away. But I found that when you start with the energetic base of things versus just the psychological base of things and trying to kind of force your mind to do something that, it's stuck in a different place, sometimes the mind shifts a little bit easier. So that's really my focus in my book is really starting in a different place other than just dealing with your emotions. Your emotions is more kind of I say the red flag, but the indicator that something is amiss. If you're having depression or anxiety or, stress, that kind of stuff, it's if you keep going back to that emotion over and over again, you feel like you're on a hamster wheel with it. It really is one of those things that, starting in a different place from an energetic perspective can really be helpful in shifting that quickly.
Well, I know that we're always looking, especially in America, we're always looking for the quick fix. And there is a part of that feel when you say, feel better in 5 minutes, the quick fix. Usually, though, it's you're popping a pill. And feel better in 5 minutes, as it is stated here, is an easy to follow guide with the vivid stories, which we will talk about, that you, the listener, you, the viewer who are watching on YouTube, can relate to. And it brings energetic principles that you just spoke about, Amanda, down to earth, that you can apply. You can apply them in your life right now and with confidence. And we encourage people to go to your website as well. And we, by the way, will be linked to the website, which is Amanda Hainline.com, and that last name is spelled Hainline, AmandaHainline.com. How did you come up with this? And any particular reason why it's 5 minutes? I mean, is it just kind of a reasonable amount of time, or is that just what the length of time it took?
Well, these techniques were developed over the years, over the last 15 years, by me and my spirit guides and angels that I work with on a regular basis, because I am an intuitive healer. I'm an audiovoyant, clairvoyant, basically psychic as well as a healer. So, what I know about myself and society at large, as you highlighted, is, we're a little bit impatient. We want something now. We want something that helps rather quickly. But we also know that if we've done things quickly for any amount of time, a lot of times it's just a Band-Aid. And so with these techniques, the goal is that you feel better quickly and you get to dig deeper at the same time with a little bit of extra intention set on the technique. So over time, you're actually getting to the deeper stuff without necessarily having to dig in and spend an hour, in meditation or working on yourself. You can do this in little bitty chunks. It's kind of like the Tabata workout of energy work. Tabata workouts are really quick, right? They're like 4 minutes long. So the idea was that these techniques all take 5 minutes or less. Usually, once you get the hang of it, actually, you can do these very, very quickly, 30 seconds to a minute, once you kind of get it down. So 5 minutes is a very reasonable time to be able to feel an energetic shift in your body, relaxation in your physical body, relaxation in your mind, regaining focus in your mind whenever you do these techniques. So yeah, it's a reasonable amount of time. And the goal was definitely to help people be able to tell a difference fast, because, we just don't have a lot of time in our society, in our lives to work on ourselves. Unfortunately, it'd be great if we had all the hours of the day, but we don't. So that's the focus.
Now, you have 79 techniques. How are these broken down? Are these set up in separate categories, or is there a particular one for, I don't know, 79 different situations? Tell us about how this was created.
So the way it was created, when I set out to do this, I didn't have a set number in mind, but I knew that there were different categories of techniques that I wanted to highlight. And as you go through the book, the techniques kind of build on each other. You can flip to any page in the book and do the technique. It's simple enough to follow if you just, flip to page, 200, for instance. I don't know what's on page 200, but for instance, if you just want to flip to page 200 and say, okay, I'm going to do this technique, you can do it, no problem. But the book is built so that you kind of learn as you go. You're being able to tell a difference as you go. And it starts with very simple technique of just releasing the emotion, setting the intention, understanding you're separate from your emotions. That's a big one that people don't understand a lot of times. You aren't your emotions, because we go around and say, well, that's just who I am. I'm just an anxious person. I'm just depressed. And the I am, it really wraps up in our identity. And so teaching people to start separating that to begin with, that's kind of step one, saying you are separate from your emotions. You're just experiencing that, and it's supposed to move through you. You're not supposed to hold on to it and make it your identity. So that's kind of the first step. But they are broken down into kind of categories. First couple of chapters talk about just kind of the basis, the premise of energy and how it's related to your emotions and all of that. And then chapter 3 is the assessment. And then it moves on to setting intention, working with color in the techniques. It goes into working with your physical organs, understanding the correlation between your physical organs and your emotions and your energy system. And then it goes into grounding and journaling and other things. And towards the end of the book, it really is, some protocols that, if you have repressed anger, for instance, there's a protocol for that. And it's the techniques that are found earlier in the book, because what I found was when I was passing this out to people, they loved the techniques, and they loved how many different ways there were to release energy in the book and, change your emotions and feel better quickly. But sometimes they were like, well, can you just give me a set of these that work for, XYZ? So that's what one of the chapters is just kind of a protocol that people can that are put together for someone that is having these particular issues. And then there's a chapter just focused on, well, if you want to make your own set of techniques, how do you do that? How do you determine which ones could possibly help you the best? So it's broken down and definitely into different categories. I tried to make it to where you could flip to the end of a chapter and get the techniques all in one place if you want to, and then just the general technique or the general idea of the entire chapter is highlighted at the end of the chapter as well. So because people, like I said, you don't have a lot of time these days, and it's easy to have something that's really more of a reference manual rather than something you have to read cover to cover to get anything out of it. So that was the idea.
Well, it's a very, very interesting work that you've done here. Again, feeling better in 5 minutes. It's an empowering guide to gain control over your emotions. And of course, we're talking about the whole energetic aspect of who and what we are. And we hope that you will continue listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we are here with Amanda Hainline. And that is the website that we are going to be linked to, amandaheinline.com. And talking, of course, about the book, Feel Better in 5 Minutes. And one of the things that have certainly, I mean, you just addressed it actually in terms of what we tend to do in our lives these days is, again, it's like, I want patience and I want it now kind of thing. And again, as we mentioned, there's 79 techniques in this book. So again, very easy to follow. And as you said, you can open the book up pretty much to any one of them and just begin to experience that emotional freedom as well as an abundant life. It can be yours, and it takes 5 minutes. That's interesting because when we talk about the decade of perfect vision, Amanda, we talk about people taking time to go within, to spend time with that still small voice, that intuition, if you will, in that quiet, peaceful, calm space. And one of our guests said, even if you just took 60 seconds, so even 5 minutes is, now, if it were 60 seconds or 5 minutes on the radio or in a podcast or videocast, that goes on forever. But 5 minutes goes by really fast.
It does go by really fast. And like I said, when you're starting out with the techniques and you're just like when you're learning anything new, it's going to take a little bit more time. So 5 minutes was just kind of an easy benchmark. But, I do say in the book, once you get this down, a lot of these you can do I myself can do them in 15 to 20 seconds, but I've been doing them a while. Learning how to feel through it, trust your intuition. That's a big thing that I talk about in the book, and going within. Huge. That's a huge piece of doing this internal work, because the more you do a deep dive, which you can do with these techniques as well, the more you learn about yourself and the more accepting you get of the things you've been through, and kind of understand that, your actions and your choices and all those things are coming from, really your past, and you're making decisions from a different perspective than you might have if you hadn't had those traumas and things happen in your life. So what this does is start to really unravel that and get your mind in a new place so you can see new possibilities. But doing, you can do these exercises, these techniques pretty quickly once you learn. So it's pretty awesome to see people go through them and start to feel empowered and not debilitated by things they've been through. And that's another purpose of the book.
Well, now, you mentioned earlier that you are, you said clairvoyant and so forth. Of course, the broader perspective would be, I guess, an intuitive or medium or psychic, if you will. When did that happen? When did you come to that realization?
Well, I was about 30 years old, and I was very depressed. I was just a suburban mom raising two kids. They were two and 4, 2 and 5 at the time. And a friend recommended that I go to an energy healer because I was really struggling in my life. And I didn't really know what that was, but I decided to go ahead and go because I thought, well, if it'll help, I'm game. So I went to one session, felt much better after that session, decided to keep going on that as a track because I thought, well, this is I like this better than, taking medication or doing something else that just didn't feel right for me. So I went back for a second session, and the healer told me that all of my chakras wanted to open at once. And I didn't know what a chakra was. I didn't have the background in that at all, which, chakras are energy centers that run down the middle of your body in your energy system, which I wasn't really even familiar with the energy system at the time. I knew nothing about any of this. And she started tapping on me to move energy in my body. And I started feeling like I was burning from the inside out. My whole body tensed up. I was screaming. It was really horrifying, honestly. And I was told afterwards that all my chakras had opened and that they would balance and close and my life would go back to normal. That's not what happened. I started hearing voices. I started seeing things that other people couldn't see. I was having nightmares. I was having PTSD episodes from all of the traumas that I had as a child coming back up, just bubbling up. I couldn't control them. And so I just kept going back to healers because that was the only thing that would give me any relief. It was the only place that I could get answers because I didn't have a name for what had happened to me at the time. So that went on for about 6 months. And then one day I was doing laundry and 3 giant angels showed up in my living room in my sitting in front of my bar. And I was like, I've been accustomed to these things showing up in my house. And I was like, what do you want now? Like, I'm busy today. I'm trying to do laundry. I'm having a day where I actually feel good enough to do things around the house, which was rare. And so they said, well, we're going to teach you how to heal people. And I'm like, oh no, you have the wrong house. Like, this is not going to work for me because I'm busy. I'm raising 2 little kids. I'm in a tough marriage. I'm stressed. My plate's full. They're like, no, this is what's going to happen right now. And so people started showing up in my life for me to do this work with friends of friends, family. Different people started needing help, and my guides were telling me, my angels that were working with me were telling me, like, this is your job, like this is why you're here, so you need to do this work. And they taught me. It was a on-the-job training, really, with that. When I'm in an energy session with somebody, when I'm in their energy field and I'm being told, what to do next. And it's been fascinating. That was about 15 years ago. So I've been doing that work ever since.
I've understood from many of my guests that it is something that we all have innately within us, but it's just that we haven't either A, maybe been called, or B, we just haven't practiced it.
Right. Yes, I would agree with that. Some of us are meant to come here and, have this kind of experience that I had, or something in between, and they're seeking that enlightenment. They're seeking that spiritual guidance and they're meditating and doing all of those things because they feel like that's part of their path, which is fantastic. And we just we get to different places to varying degrees. It's just like if you lined up 100 people and they started playing baseball, there's probably 1 or 2 that are phenomenal at what they're doing, right? It's not that everybody can't hit the ball, but it's just one of those things that, we open up to varying degrees over our lifetime. And it definitely can be learned, if it's something that you're called to pursue. And I tell people, if you're called to pursue something like that, then pursue it, see where it goes. You never know.
Yeah. We're talking with Amanda Hainline, and we're talking, of course, about the work that she does, as well as the book that she has out right now called Feel Better in 5 Minutes. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about as we continue here is in terms of, I sort of brought up the whole emotional thing, but it's more than that. And again, I know as well as anybody else that you cannot compartmentalize the human experience. It's not all physical, it's not all mental, it's not all emotional, it's not all spiritual. It's a mixture, and it's constantly changing. And I'd like to look at that a little bit more in that conglomeration as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here today with Amanda Hainline, and we're talking about, of course, her book, which is entitled Feel Better in 5 Minutes. And obviously that first word, feel. Feel has to do with emotions. Oh, well, at least it could, or it could have to do with, one of the senses, touching and so forth. But we're not just a feeling. And yeah, you hear the phrase, I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience or a human experience or whatever. And we also have an intellect. And I'm wondering how all of that, in the process of any one of those 79 techniques, is sort of put in balance. Maybe that's the best way to put it, is trying to keep it all more balanced so that one is not necessarily running my life all the frickin' time.
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree more with you on that, because I do think a lot of people get down one track and say, well, it's all this, it's all spiritual, or it's all emotional, you have to adjust the psychology, or, oh, you need to go to the doctor, you need to work out, you need to eat right, kind of thing. And what I talk about in the book, the analogy I use is that the body, mind, spirit, I kind of roll my eyes when I hear that, because I'm like, I think it's overused. People don't really understand what that means on kind of an energetic level compared to the emotional and physical. So I use the analogy of a sandwich in my book, and I say, there's 3 layers to the sandwich: body, mind, spirit. And the bottom one is spirit and your energy system. It's really the core of everything. The emotions are, the middle of the sandwich. It's kind of like when you have a sandwich, you say, you don't say, oh, I had, and you talk about the bread. I mean, unless you eat gluten-free bread like me, and then you get really excited when it's good. But, I mean, you talk about the middle of the sandwich. What's on it? Oh, you've got, salami and pastrami and lettuce and, arugula, whatever you have, right? That's what you talk about. And then the top one is, what you see when you just look at the sandwich. That's your physical body, right? So, the middle of the sandwich is really where people focus. And that's really where the emotions show up. People don't walk around and say, oh, my aura has a hole in it. I'm so sad. It's like, no, the energetic disruptions happen first, and then it trickles down to the emotional, and then it trickles down to the physical. And so it's kind of related in this cascading pattern. And what I've seen in people a lot of times is they will have things show up in their energetic fields before the actual event occurs, like a trauma. I've seen people with, like, energetically their finger will be missing, and I'm like, oh, we need to work on that, because, the energy is missing for that. You could lose that finger. It's really interesting how these things cascade down, but, the finger has to do with something emotional they're going through. Like, everything's related. It's really interesting how all that works. So, to say that it's all, energy is, while that may be the root of everything, you have to address these other components. You can't just address one thing. So it's definitely all very intricately related. And it's important for people to understand that. I think we miss the energy part a lot of times. If we're just working out and eating right, it's fantastic. Even if you're meditating, a lot of times you use meditation as kind of a drug, because you say, oh, well, I'm super stressed out unless I meditate. And it's like, okay, well, why are you stressed out to begin with? Where is the root of that? Not that meditation is not fantastic for a lot of things, for calming us and, giving us introspection and all that. But if you're using it in that way, it really is something that you need to look at deeper pieces.
That's interesting because we've had a number of people on this program over the years talking about meditation, and what I started learning about it was, okay, you had to do this, you had to do that, you had to clear your mind, you had to tell your mind to shut up, stay away, and stop doing what it's doing. You had to sit in a particular position, and da-da-da-da-da, and that the goal of meditation was whatever it was. Yeah. And over the years, I have learned, though I am not a practicing meditator, I
You're
take the perspective of Teresa of Avila, that God is amongst the pots and the pans, or in my case, the circuits and the digits. And this is where I find my equilibrium, my peace, my calm.
fine.
And I found out that the goal of meditation is that, guess what? There is no goal. It's
Right.
kind of like the Buddha. Finally, Siddhartha sits down at the Bodhi tree and he's like, I give up. I'm tired of looking for enlightenment. Oh, that's it. And as soon as he stopped looking, he found it.
Yes.
So that to me is what meditation is about, and it can take on, any form you want. There are almost 8 billion people, so there are over 8 billion different ways to meditate.
Yes, I could not agree more with that. I have a story in the book talking about, I say, there's no right way to do energy work. I mean, there's some basic principles, but, I visited this woman and she was telling me, oh, it has to be this way. It has to be that way. She had been trained. And there was another woman there that was like, these were, new people in my life, and I didn't think anything of it. But the other woman that was there, that wasn't the teacher that was leading the meditation. She was a new friend of mine, and she goes, well, I can't. She goes, I can't clear my mind. I can't. That doesn't work for me. And she's like, oh, well, that's the only way you can open your chakras and balance yourself. And I'm like, no, that's actually not true. That's actually not true at all. And I saw a vision of her running in my mind. And I said, do you run? And she goes, yes, that's the only time my mind is clear. I said, that's your meditation then. I said, you can start working on those other ways to meditate, but that's where you find peace. Then that is your form of meditation, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has a different form of meditation, whether that's walking in nature or writing or playing a violin, or like if I tried to play a violin and get peace, I would be sorely disappointed. But, for a lot of people, they have their own Zen space. And for you, it's, among the elements of like digits and chords, like you said, it's like that is definitely not my Zen space. But everyone is different and everyone is wired differently, and I think really respecting how you find your peace is huge. I mean, it's definitely something. There's not one way to do this stuff. Everyone's different. So I think that's great that you've come to that realization for
And let me
yourself.
also explain that I am not on social media. Okay. I do not have my phone in my hand 24/7. I do not check my email every 3 seconds. I don't do any of that. What I am referring to is, number one, what you and I are doing right here. That is where
Right.
it's also my therapy. Okay. This is my therapy. And I love it. I love it. It's a lot of fun. But also doing production, doing editing, whether it is conducting interviews, whether it is producing programs or commercials, or what I used to do many years ago, radio theater. Now I edit videos, which I didn't do before until a couple of years ago. But then there's another part too, where if I wasn't here, I would be home. And home happens to be in a rather rural part of Santa Barbara County, where I currently have a pile of wood that I need to split. And I was out there last night. I was actually gathering some smaller pieces because we had a little fire in the fireplace last night. But I know I need to go out there and I need to split some of that wood so that we're ready for the winter. And I love being outside, and I love being in the area where we live. We have a lot of animals that meander around the property that we live on, wild animals. We have a deer, and we have actually had a bear or two.
Wow.
All kinds of different birds, from crows to blue jays. I think my wife calls them skylarks. And rodents, we have chickens that are sequestered because they're protected from their predators. But I love being out in it. And that's another form of meditation for me. But
Right.
everybody has to find their own space, right?
They do. Everyone has to find their own space, and it looks different for every single person. So it's, I think a lot of times people judge themselves for their for what that space is, or other people judge them for what that space is. I mean, I've heard people say it's making pottery, or like, I love being outside. That's my zen space, honestly. I love being outside. I love being in nature. That's where I gain my balance back when I feel out of whack, so I can totally relate to what you're saying. And it's something different for everybody. So I think that's important for people to understand, and it's whatever that is for you, it is for you, and sometimes over your lifetime that changes, and that's okay too,
Yeah.
as you grow and change.
Yeah.
So
Well, I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona, a rather non-rural area, very much in the middle of the city. And it was nice. I think back on my childhood and growing up and how different it was then than it would be now for a lot of people, because there's a lot more concrete and asphalt and it's a lot hotter, which is why I am not there anymore. That's why one main reason I moved. I didn't like the heat. I mean, I know people who do, and that's fine. More power to them. But like you say, it changes, and I remember many, many Friday nights and Saturday nights. We would make tents in the backyard, to my mother's consternation, with these Indian blankets that she had, and and we would make tents, little pup tents, and sleep outside under the stars or under the trees, what have you, and really enjoyed that. Didn't care much for the mosquitoes, but that's another story. And it's unfortunate that that doesn't exist there anymore, at least not as far as I can tell. I've been back to Phoenix a few times and it's just not the same. But it's like you say, everybody has to find their own place, and it may change from place to place and time to time, especially as we get older. And I'm 61, and and quite honestly having the time of my life, as I am having the time of my life here with Amanda Hainline. Amanda Hainline is my guest. Her book is Feel Better in 5 Minutes. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. How long does it take you to feel better? An hour and a half? You got to take a pill, you got to meditate, you've got to do some yoga. And again, no criticism or judgment on whatever method you choose. I understand that. But maybe you could find a better and faster way through Feel Better in 5 Minutes from Amanda Hainline. Amanda, let me ask you, how and why did you come up with this concept of feeling better in 5 minutes?
Well, the book itself really started out of the pandemic. I was on social media. I do that a few times a day. And I was noticing that people were really starting to say, last March, when COVID just hit and no one knew what it was or what caused it or how it was transmitted or any of that. And everyone was really scared. They were feeling stressed. They were feeling fearful, and they weren't even feeling necessarily, they were feeling their own fear and anxiety and stress, but they were also feeling it just in the atmosphere around them. And they said, I can't shut it off. I can't shake this feeling. I don't know what to do. And so I wrote a small thing and put it on my website called Empath Take Back Your Power. And as I was writing it, I kept going, gosh, I want to add this and I want to add that to it. And it was just a little, like, I think it's 5 or 6 pages, something like that. And I thought, oh, maybe this is a book. And I've been wanting to write a book, and it just hadn't quite come together. I had put client stories down on paper about 4 years before that, but I just didn't have the other pieces to go. And then I started thinking about all the techniques that I've used over the years for myself, for my family, for clients. And I started writing them down and then categorize them and really put the stories to them so that people could have a way to relate, because that's the biggest thing. That's the most powerful thing, is stories. And people need to be able to see themselves in these techniques, see that, the results are something that you can get to fairly quickly. And so that was the goal of the book, is that, you're just able to pick it up and do something fast. So but it really was born out of the pandemic. So as an introvert, I loved the alone time. And I said, okay, great. I'm locked in my house. No one's really contacting me. It's perfect, and I sat down, and it took me, I thought it was going to take me 3 months, and it took me a little over a year to write the whole thing. It ended up being a lot longer than I intended. But I think it turned out pretty well. So I'm really excited to share it with everybody. And it's been a fun journey.
Now, how about your family and your friends around you? How have they responded to this particular, shall we say, branch of your metaphysical or spiritual tree?
Well, that's an interesting question, because, I was raised Southern Baptist. But it's kind of loosely, because, my mom worked in the church, my dad worked in the church, my sister worked in the church, but it wasn't something that was like highly impressive on me at home. It was just kind of in my environment. That's where I went for social things, and all of that. So really my background was that, and really what I'm doing now was kind of teased and made fun of when I was growing up. It was always like, oh, those crazy people, that think, everybody's one, and all this kind of stuff. It was like chakras and, oh, all that stuff's woo woo, and those people are nuts. And I even played a part in a church play when I think I was 14 or 15 years old, making fun of exactly what I do now. So that's kind of the irony of my life. And I walked in and I said, I want that part, and I got it. So I laugh about that now. I think it's pretty funny. But in general, people have been pretty receptive, friends around me. I don't have a lot of friends from before I had my awakening. Most of them have been since then. But my family, at first they really didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know what to make of it. And I didn't share a lot of things with them because they didn't have an understanding for it. And I had very little understanding for what I was going through. So being able to articulate it was a little difficult, and but I didn't have any of my family members, reject me or shun me or anything like that. So I was very, very lucky in that respect, because I know a lot of healers that have had that happen, which is heartbreaking when that happens. But it's all part of our path and our journey, and it really does make you stronger, because you come more upon a self-reliance and a reassurance in yourself. You just keep going back to the center of yourself and to your core, and saying, well, who am I as a person, regardless of what anyone else thinks? And that's not always easy to do. But I was pretty fortunate in that my family, even though they just kind of look at me and go, I don't know what you're talking about, we still love you and it doesn't matter, kind of thing. So that was kind of my experience with it, which was good.
Well, I find it interesting too, because I was born and raised a Catholic, and so to you I say, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." Uh, it's one of those things that I was introduced to it, the whole aspect of intuitiveness, if you will, the medium, the psychic, the intuitive, the clairvoyant, the clairaudient, the clairsentient, I believe it is, among other things. Even took a class in, oh my gosh, what was the name of the class now? I can't remember. Basically what we did was we were given these envelopes. In the envelope was a picture. We were to scan the picture, okay, with our hand.
Mm-hmm.
And we were to give our first impression of what that was inside the envelope. And I was pretty darn accurate most of the time.
That's awesome.
I didn't lay a lot of money down on it in terms of, okay, this is going to become my career or anything of this nature. But what it told me was, again, as we said earlier, everybody has these abilities innately within them. I happened to just happened to be a Reiki master, went through that course, finding out that it's not me. I'm just a conduit. I'm
Right.
fine. I'd rather it not be me. I would rather be the conduit.
Yeah.
Of late I've been using it a lot because there have been some situations I've been sending that energy to and saying, please just, do something else. It's like I have no expectations. I know what I'd like to have happen, but I can't, that's not what the energy's for. It's not, I don't control it. That's the whole point of being a conduit. You don't control it. It just goes through me and out it goes. And that's one of the things too that I'd like to talk to you a little bit about in terms of how you talk and share and interact with people in that regard as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. Amanda Hainline is my guest. Her book, Feel Better in 5 Minutes. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you for staying with us here on the program as we come your way Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and our special edition on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. It is a shortened version, so you might want to go to the podcast to listen to the entire interview. It could be, I don't know how long. But we would encourage you to do that. Also, you can go to this podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iTunes, as well as iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We're also on YouTube. You can watch these videos, and we will also have our guest's name as well as their website up there on the screen. So you can then, while you're listening to or watching the program, you can go to their website and check out what they're doing and what they have available for you. So you might want to do that. I want to ask you about the interactions that you have with people. Now, there are lots of different ways in which a medium, I don't know why I like using that word better than any other, shares their talent or their ability. Some of them will actually open a shop. I mean, there are bookstores, metaphysical bookstores, where in the back there's a place cordoned off with a curtain, and you go in there and they will give you a reading. They'll maybe use tarot cards. They may use crystals. They may use a myriad of different modalities as well as their own innate abilities. What is the way in which you have found is for you most effective for those people who come to you to receive I'll put it this way, the information that you have to share with them?
Well, I just use the information that comes in. I don't use tarot cards normally. I don't use crystals really as far as receiving information. Usually what I focus on is just the conversation. So if someone usually comes in with a specific thing that they want to talk about, right? I mean, we always wait till there's a problem or, I want to know this, my job, my relationship, my lottery numbers, whatever it is. And so people will come in and they will ask me questions about specific things. And I tell people what I'm guided to tell them. So that is to say that sometimes I will receive information that is just for me to know and not for me to share with the person. And that's always delineated whenever I'm disseminating the information. So when I get information, the way it comes in is it'll come in through kind of just clear knowing. It'll come in through guides. It'll come in through, sometimes I'll see or talk to a person that's crossed over that this person knew, or it will come through visions that I see in front of me, the clairvoyant or clairaudient. It's kind of like, I tell people, it's kind of like I have a funnel on top of my head, it's that crown chakra, and everything just kind of comes through there. And I've learned how to interpret the information as far as what that information means. And then what I'm supposed to tell that person, I can kind of feel that out. And my goal, the goal that really has been set forth by my guides that I understand and that I carry out is that the goal is not to just tell the person everything. The goal is to help the person see a different perspective so that they can come to their conclusions with that and really help to empower them to use their own intuition in a situation. For instance, I have people come to me all the time and say, oh, this guy I'm dating, is he the one? And sometimes I hear, absolutely not, run, and if I'm supposed to say that, I will. But if I get that it's a toxic situation, if I get that it's not healthy for them and they have blind spots, they can't see that it's not healthy. What I'll tell them is, well, how does it make you feel in conversation? How does it make you feel when you have an argument? Like, what are the dynamics around that? And kind of getting their mind in a place of looking for, not necessarily like looking for all the red flags, but kind of getting them understanding that, hey, maybe there's some traumas that you have that are causing blind spots for you, that you're not taking care of yourself the way that you need to in this situation. Maybe you need to start looking at this a different way. And if you're feeling like this isn't right for you, there's going to come a point where you're going to know that you need to move on. Or it could be that you go through healing with this person and they're healing and you're healing and you come to a really good place, but I usually tell the parent, well, you'll know in 3 months, or you'll know in 6 months, or, next week, something's going to happen that's really going to give you clarity, rather than saying, absolutely not, you need to get out of there, unless, that I'm supposed to tell that person that. So it's very much an empowering conversation versus something that I just tell them it's black or white. This is what's going to happen. This isn't what's going to happen. Because honestly, whenever you do a reading for someone, it's a snapshot. So whatever the energy is laid out for in that moment is what the answer is going to be right then. Sometimes the information you give that person is meant to actually lead them in a different direction. It's not necessarily the absolute truth at that moment. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand with readings. They say, well, you told me this was going to happen on this day and it didn't happen. It's like, well, the energy shifted, something changed. And so therefore, the answer changed, the outcome changed. And that doesn't mean that the person getting the information that was giving it to you was incorrect necessarily. It's just not always meant to manifest the way that we think it's going to manifest. I mean, that happens for me all the time. People say, oh, you're psychic, you must have all the answers in your life must be so easy. And I'm like, well, no, because the information I get is meant to lead me in different directions as well, so it's important for people to understand when they get readings that that's the case. When I'm doing energy work, it's like you said, you're a conduit. I'm very aware that I'm not the one doing the work. When I tell people, I'm an intuitive healer, I really don't like that term, although people know what it means when I say that. What I say is, honestly, that's a misnomer, because I'm not the one doing the healing. You're the one doing the healing. If I'm working with you, you're the one you're healing yourself.
Yeah.
It's not me doing it. I'm bringing the energy through to your energy system so that the healing can take place, and I can help you interpret it and understand it and all of that. But really, it's up to your energy system and your body to do the healing. So I just try to help people understand that that's the case. And in that way, they're not looking to me for all of the answers, because honestly, I don't have the time to answer every single question that they have, but getting them to trust their own intuition, because like you said, everybody has it. Everybody has this ability to heal, to interpret things for themselves, but we have these blind spots because we've had trauma in our lives. So that's what I try to do, is really empower people to be their own guides as much as they possibly can.
And what I also find very interesting as a Reiki Reiki master, and understanding how that energy is used, if you will, also requires the question, what is healing? Because when we talk about using the energy and talk about being the conduit for that energy for an individual's healing, quote unquote healing, I then have to relate the story of my father's brother, who we sent an absentee healing to when we had been told that he had been diagnosed with cancer.
Mhm.
And so we asked for a photograph, and we did an absentee healing. And a few weeks later, following the funeral of my uncle, my mother told us the story of what happened. And she says, yeah, he got real angry one morning and he took his meds and threw them across the room, jumped in his wheelchair, wheeled across the compound where his family lived to his son's house, where he went inside. And I guess they must have had a moment or a time of closure. And then shortly after that, he passed. Well, shoot, but we sent him an absentee healing for his healing. So now I'm sitting here going, and I do put this question out there based upon that story, based upon knowing what a Reiki healer's job is function, her function. And I ask you that same question. Based upon that, what's healing?
Well, healing, I think, it's different things, right? I mean, when we as humans think of healing, we think of, I mean, your thought process was, if we send healing, this certain thing will occur.
Oh,
right?
no, now bear in mind, I had no expectations.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. But I know for myself, like I have had times where I'm like, oh, we'll do healing and then this will happen, when I was first starting out, not completely understanding this. And really healing the physical body a lot of times is not the soul's goal. His soul's goal was to get that closure, to have that healing within his soul, so that when he crossed over, he wasn't carrying that with him, and that's what it accomplished, so it's healing. When a lot of people think of healing, oh, hands-on healing, it means, you have this injury or something and you send the energy and then it gets better, that's not really necessarily the soul's goal. I mean, sometimes it is in alignment with that and sometimes it isn't, and you have to, as a healer, I think, really recognize that healing doesn't always look like what we think it's going to look like. It can look like lots of different things. Yeah. And it's hard to accept, when you first start out and you're doing this work, because you get into it because you have a passion to help people. You feel like you've been called to this purpose. And I remember the first time I had a session, I actually did it on a dog, and this dog had cancer. And the dog came in and the dog wouldn't stay still, but I, energetically put his field in front of me and I worked on his field, and he ran around the room and whined the entire time. I mean, he could feel everything I was doing. And they said, oh, the next day he got up and he was running around, and he hadn't run around in forever because he had a mass at the base of his spine. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can't believe it. And I've been doing this healing work like a year probably at that point. I thought, oh, I felt so good inside and all of this. And a month later, they were supposed to bring the dog back. And so they didn't show up for their session. And I called them. I said, hey, what's going on? You were going to bring your dog in. And she's like, oh yeah, we put him down. And I was like, oh, what? Why didn't you bring him back? I was devastated. And I checked in with my guides and I was crying and I was so upset. And I said, I did healing on this dog. I thought the dog was getting better. And they said the dog did get better. And then it left. It was done with this plane. And I was like, I don't understand, and it took me a while to really come to the realization what healing meant for that animal. It did get better. It was able to play with the ball again, and it was able to release that energy it was carrying around from its family, which was a huge gift to the dog and to the family. And then the dog was ready to go. And so having that realization as a healer, I think it's a tough kind of lesson that you have to go through when you're doing healing work, because it does devastate you when that stuff happens, but you have to not be attached to the outcome. Like you said, that's the biggest thing is in healing, you don't know what it's going to look like. I've done sessions on people that my first client was 5 minutes long. And I thought, how could this possibly help her? I felt guilty asking her for payment, honestly, because I was like, oh, this is like 5 minutes. And she got phenomenal results from that. It completely changed her relationship with her children, with her mother, with herself in regards to overextending herself. And you never know as a healer what that healing is going to manifest as. So it's pretty awesome when you see the results of it, because you don't know.
Exactly. Amanda Hainline is my guest. Her book is Feel Better in 5 Minutes. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you for staying with us. And Amanda, I want to thank you as we wrap up for joining us here on the program, being part of Tell Me Your Story and sharing your story. I have three final questions for you that I like to ask my guests. You've probably addressed them to some degree during the interview, but I like to ask them directly. But again, my thanks to you for being with us here today.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So the first of my three questions to you, number one, who is Amanda Hainline?
Well, I am an intuitive healer that is here to bring the message to people that you have an energy system, you can use it to change your life, and it's something that everyone has the power to do. So that's at my core, that's who I feel like I am.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
I hope to bring that just knowledge and perspective to everyone, that they can be empowered to change their life. They don't have to sit in where they're at. If they're not happy, they can really change their lives through energy work and through empowering themselves and others around them to make a shift and move into who they were meant to be.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
My life's purpose is to empower others around me, to bring light wherever there's darkness, and help people understand that what resides within them is the ultimate really power of the universe to change the world the way they were meant to change the world. Help people see a new perspective on their life and the lives around them so that they can live their purpose.
Well, Amanda, again, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. It's been a great pleasure, and I thank you for sharing your story once again. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to lol.